Let's go back to Microsoft and bring in Anurag Rana, Senior Software and IT Services Analyst for us at Bloomberg Intelligence. And Anurag, when you look at these numbers, based on what Microsoft reported and based on the consensus estimates, they look to be a beat pretty much across the board, yet we're seeing a negative reaction in the shares. What jumped out at you?
So if you would have put a gun to my head and said, how aggressive could I be? I would have said, a lot of these numbers are pretty impressive in the current environment. And I think, the stock reaction is just telling me that that people are not expecting, going forward, a same kind of growth rates for some of these companies, because in the last 12 months, they have seen very, very good bounce back from a weaker the prior year. And I think comparisons are going to get tough for not just Microsoft, but almost all large technology companies.
Well, why is that specifically? I mean, we are seeing tech spend right now. We are seeing companies spend money on upgrading their services. But why are these comps going to be such a challenge?
So if you look at it, overall software spending anywhere is about 10 to 12% at any given time. Microsoft, being almost more than 1/3 of the software market, is growing almost 2 times that. That is very impressive. But to be honest, you can't keep up with that just because the overall industry is not growing as much. So it's more a math problem, not as much an issue with Microsoft's market position or anything else.
Specifically, the cloud business, we know it is the margins, the profitability that you talk about that are so important. How are you thinking about competition and growth within the cloud business?
So the Azure grows were at 46%, which is 3 points above what Street was looking for. So which is very impressive because we would have thought that because of Omicron, there would have been some lower transactions in the leisure industry or the transportation industry or the hospitality industry, but we haven't seen that. And I think that shows a lot that people are pushing a lot more workloads to the cloud. Digital transformations are very strong right now, and we saw that with numbers from IBM, Accenture, Tata Consultancy. Like, all these companies reported really strong results. I mean, from our side, this is not bad news, frankly.
All right, but certainly investors reading it that way. Shares of Microsoft down about 5.4% in the after hours. You are listening to Bloomberg Radio, watching Bloomberg TV. We're talking to Anurag Rana, Senior Analyst of Software and IT Services at Bloomberg Intelligence. So, Anurag, Activision, how much will the company be asked about that on the call?
I think quite a bit, because if you look at the Activision stock price below 80, or at least that's what I saw last time, I mean, the market's telling me that there is some confusion, or they're not clear whether the deal is going to go through or not. I think there should be a lot of questions on the call about, what are they doing to convince regulators that, that this is it's an all right deal for them, and how can they pacify some of the opponents that they are not going to take the video game market and corner it. I think this is going to be the biggest question on the call, along with the normal questions such as profitability and cloud.
Anurag, of course, Remain posed a question, theoretical in its nature, about what would happen, who's going to be the biggest mover of the market this week, whether it's going to be Apple, whether it's going to be Microsoft. But from a supply chain perspective, are you going to hear or listen out for anything coming from Microsoft, or is that more of a question for Apple?
I think it's a little bit of both, but it has a less of an impact on Microsoft's total earnings than it does for Apple. And frankly, from Apple's side, we're getting a bit of mixed signals. There was a news story about Honhai's, chairman talking about a really strong first quarter. But at the same time, the virus cases in China have gone up, and sometimes that has an impact on the factories that does the supply chain. And as we have always said for Apple, it's not a demand story from our side, but it's a matter of, can they fulfill the orders for the iPhones?